if it's wrong for me to be attracted to the same gender, why would God create me in his image with those desires? And I think that in a nutshell, I think he framed it very well, the question. And I think that this is the question that a lot of people in our culture are asking, and the reason why a lot of people don't like Christianity, because this seems to be like a contradiction. Hey guys, welcome back to Applied Theology, where we talk about all things biblical, theological, practical. My name is Mara, I'm a pastor. Today is going to be a very quick video. I came across a clip from the Impulsive podcast, Logan Paul's podcast, where they actually had Cliffe from Give Me an Answer YouTube channel, a very popular Christian YouTube channel that seeks to provide people with evidence for the existence of Jesus. They go on college campuses and kind of do debates, answer questions, genuine questions from people about Christianity, about Jesus, and they usually give a great answer. If you want to see them and kind of get some more information about the channel, watch some videos, I'll link it in the description. Logan on the Impulsive podcast had Cliffe on the podcast recently and dove into some serious theological, biblical topics. And I just thought it was really, really cool. But there was specifically one thing they talked about in terms of sexuality that I just thought was very interesting, because I think it's a question that a lot of people are asking in terms of our sexuality as humans. Like, is it fluid? Is it a choice? Is it something that I'm born with? And if I am born with it, if you want me to believe that God is real and that God created me in his image, why do I struggle with this? And why is it bad? You know, these are questions that I think people are asking in the culture, especially in the LGBTQ community, as they are like engaging with Christians. What's really interesting though is that this isn't really a hard question for Christians to answer. I do think there are Christians who maybe struggle to answer this, mostly because we don't want to come across as offensive, because being offensive in our culture in the West, in the US, is just kind of labeled as wrong or disrespectful or even unloving. And so I think a lot of Christians maybe struggle with that. I know I've struggled with it before, like early on in my faith. But anyways, let's look at what Logan Paul actually asks Cliffe, and then we'll kind of answer that and kind of give some scriptures to kind of how do we deal with this.
I believe you're attracted to who you're attracted to. Granted, like, yeah, things are super fluid now, and like people are making decisions based on like their environment, what they see, whatever. But like, I would argue that, like, you know, if I think certain people are just attracted to who they are attracted to. So why would God create someone in his image who goes directly against his codex that he created?
First of all, Logan states clearly that, hey, like, I believe that a person's attractions, they're born with that. They don't choose that. Like, this is something that they're born with. And so if God created me in his image, why would he then create me with attractions that go against his codex, as Logan called it, right? So if it's wrong for me to be attracted to the same gender, why would God create me in his image with those desires? And I think that in a nutshell, I think he framed it very well, the question. And I think that this is the question that a lot of people in our culture are asking, and the reason why a lot of people don't like Christianity, because this seems to be like a contradiction, right? Well, God created me in his image, which means he created me with these desires. I didn't choose these desires. So now you're telling me that I'm going to go to hell, or this is wrong because I am acting on these desires. It's like, what's the deal? So here's the thing we need to understand. And this is something that I think Christians need to make it clear in our communication with the culture, with people who don't believe in Jesus. Not all of our desires are given by God. Not all of our desires are given by God. Yes, God created us in his image. Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 2. Yes, God gives us desires. We see that in the Psalms, right? He does give us desires, but not everything that we desire, not everything that we are attracted to even is from God. And I think we need to understand that about ourselves to understand how this even makes sense, that I can have desires that God does not approve of, and that does not put the blame on God for me having those desires. And so, yes, God does have a standard in terms of our sexuality and marriage. Yes, marriage is between one man, one woman, and sex is to be restricted and confined into the marriage covenant between one man and one woman. Anything outside of that is considered sexual immorality and is against God's design for sex. And so, in terms of my sexuality, Logan is asking, why would God create me with these desires and then kind of tell me not to go through with it? Well, the answer to the question is God did not create you with these desires. These desires were produced by sin. I mean, that's just the general theological answer to that question. Is sin was introduced to humanity through Satan in Genesis chapter 3, and humanity partook in sin. And so sin has now tainted the human soul, the human experience, and now we have desires. Sin produces desires in us that go against God's design and even God's desires and God's what God wants for humanity. We see this clearly in Galatians chapter 5, where Paul is talking about kind of this war that's happening inside of the Christian soul. We have these fleshly desires and these spiritual desires that come from the Spirit. The implication of this text here, theologically, is that there are desires that are in me that are produced by sin that go against, that are actually, the text says, contrary to the Spirit. And so the responsibility of the Christian is to not feed those desires, but to, as Paul says, walk in the Spirit, to live by the Spirit. We could talk about how we go about doing that in another video, but the reality is that in every human, there are desires that God did not create in them. Just because you have a desire doesn't mean that God gave it to you. Yes, you were created in God's image, but that does not mean everything that you desire is good, and it doesn't mean that everything you desire is from God. Sin produces desire in us, and our brokenness even produces desire in us. The fact that we are broken within our humanity, that's the answer to the question. And it's not a fun answer. I mean, that's not the answer that a lot of non-Christians are looking for, but it is the answer to the question of, well, how can you say that I can't love this person of the same sex when God has created me in his image and I didn't choose this desire? I was born with it. Well, the reality is like, just because you were born with a desire doesn't mean it's from God. In actuality, this is why in John chapter 3, Jesus says you need to be born again spiritually, because there needs to be a renewal that happens within our soul. We need to be created anew as a new creation, as 2 Corinthians 5 talks about. Jesus, even in Luke 9, says that if you would follow me and be my disciple, you must first take up your cross and deny yourself. And deny yourself being, you need to at times deny the desires that you are feeling that are contrary to God. And that is the war that we are in the midst of until Jesus comes or I die and I am glorified in a perfect body without any sinful desires. But until then, this is the war. And so, yes, you may be born with a desire of same-sex attraction, but that doesn't exclude you from needing to deny that desire if you want to follow Jesus and to submit yourself to the lifestyle and the way that God has actually designed for humanity, that is offered in a reconciled relationship with Jesus. And so the Spirit gives us strength to be able to do that. Thank you guys for tuning into this very quick video. Just thought this was a great theological point that Logan was kind of asking. And I think it's a very hot topic that Christians need to know how to answer. And again, with our with this channel being kind of a resource for you to kind of be equipped theologically to be able to apply the doctrines of the Bible, I think this was just something that we should be talking about, and we should know how to answer. We should know, even for ourselves, kind of understanding our humanity and our desires, how it all fits with God's plan and with what he desires, and kind of a reconciliation. And so I would love to hear your thoughts on kind of this conversation that happened between Cliffe and Logan on the podcast. I'll link the podcast episode in the description. Feel free to watch it. Just love to hear your thoughts on this topic. So until next time, guys.